Now, to that conversation regarding the issues that have been brought out in those stories, with the last one being by Francis Atwoli, I'm joined in studio by Gabriel Muthuma as well as Muthiora Kariara. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Thanks, Dan.
I'll begin with you, Gabriel. What's your initial feeling? This whole sugar thing,
Right.
Is it a political thing or is it a business rivalry issue?
Well, I think, Dan, it encompasses almost everything that you've said. One, you must look not only at the business rivalry, which I think actually makes a huge, brings in a huge chunk of the discussion that we may have today. It also brings in the fact that we have not raised enough structures to deal with such an occurrence, because true to the fact, we all know that we have a deficit. When it comes to this commodity, and I'm talking about sugar, and this has been there through and through. What I think has happened is that people have found a conduit of messing up that system, just because there is not, or enough structures have not been put in place to ensure that that deficit is covered by a group of people who have been able and have proved themselves worthy of bringing in that commodity. That is why the whole conversation today is convoluted. And look at it this way. Politics has come into play, business rivalry, the case like we saw, the Cabras, and they are complaining. And you can see they have a genuine concern. When they say, yes, we have a deficit, we've been licensed to bring in and cover this deficit, but we find sugar coming in, and we find people who have come and taken our own brand, and we find sugar being repackaged in our brand in Isili, that actually puts us into fault. Could that be business rivalry? Of course it could be. And I can understand when a miller like that, who has been in business for all these years, is seeing sugar in shelves, Cabras, and they don't have that lot. So the government has instituted and must institute a framework whereby we know who brought in this sugar. And by the way, as you look at it, it is so convoluted. You do not know whether it's Kebs, because we have two kinds of culpabilities. We have the criminal culpability, the people who brought in these substandard goods, and then we have the managerial. That's why you see Akina Ongwae in court this morning. It's not that they are being charged with murder, and I can understand what their lawyer is saying. Yes, that could be it, but they have a place, and they have a piece, and they have a game that they played in to allow, or ensure that this sugar came into play. Probably they just sat down or sat back, relaxed, and people took advantage of that situation or lack of a system. And of course you have the cartels, if you will, who actually brought it in because there was a window and they could do it. So we are looking at these two kinds of culpabilities, and somebody must pay. We are going to be brought into a lot of shenanigans then, and you will see it playing by the day. Because if you're talking about somebody who is, bent to bring another industry down, the fact that we've not played an integral role to protect our local industry. Yes, albeit the fact that we are talking about the deficit. A role the government must play is to ensure that these millers, the farmers, first of all, our local industry is very well protected, using the infrastructures that we have, which is KRA, KEBS, and the police. But that's not what's happening. The multi-agency has failed. And when you look at the failure, it's massive. From the port to the transportation. My friend, for that particular substance to find itself at NCPB, how many kilometers did they have to travel? All right? Where was KEBS? You're told about fake stamps. How did they arise? Somebody must be found culpable. I think this is a serious issue we have at hand.
Muthiora, what's your initial feeling about the whole sugar issue, the contraband sugar issue?
It's a manifestation of failure by the institutions put in place by our government. There is, of course, business sabotage, there is politics involved, and then there is the general role that the public is supposed to play in this whole matter. Now, to put it into context, is we know for a very long time that we've had substandard sugar in our shops. You go to the shop, you buy sugar, you can tell the quality is not good, even without doing a scientific test.
How can you tell that?
If you compare the kind of sugar we have in our shelves today as to what we used to have before, but then as the Wananchi, there is nothing any one of us did, like go to court, as we saw in the matter of KPLC. We kind of just accepted that this is what the market is offering, so we have to take it. So we start there, and then we come to the institutions that have been put in place to safeguard the public against those looking to take advantage. And you see there is total failure. There is collusion between the traders and those doing business to take advantage and fleece the populace. Now, cabs, like I saw in this matter, have been faulted because when this sugar came into the country, they are the people who should have certified that we have the right kind of sugar on our shelves, but instead they sat back until this sugar found its way in the shelves. So we see there's that lack of accountability by the institutions that are in place. And then apart from that, look at the leaders who are now coming forth to point fingers. They should have been the people initially to tell that something is not going right here. Our factories have been failing because these same leaders who are now using these to milk political capital, we've had a hand in these sugar companies going down. Now, unfortunately, there is a particular company that has been on the receiving end in this matter. Cabras sugar has been on our shelves for a very long time. Now, some people raised issues that this sugar cannot be all Cabras sugar because we know the output that that company is supposed to give. And that's years back. There were complaints by the same company that there are counterfeiters who are using their brands, but then the government agencies in charge never intervened at that point to make sure that the culprits were held to account. So that went on for some time. Why this is playing out in the public gallery is because someone has been elbowed out in this whole profiteering racket that is there. And that's why it's now coming out for us. Now, even people who are not profiting are now being called in to participate and pick a side because they now need support because they're not having as much as they were having before. So I'll say it's failure by the whole system.
Gabriel,
Yeah.
we've seen, and also it was actually, even you had Musa Mudavadi mentioning it, the open conflicts
Correct.
between Matiang'i and Edan. But they later on came regrouped and gave a joint statement.
You see, that was unfortunate, and I can understand because, you know, everybody wants to protect their pond, if you will. And you could have seen where Edan was coming from. He said, we've done our tests, we've done whatever we've done, we've seen nothing. But Matiang'i, on the other hand, spoke with a lot of, not only confidence, with a lot of substance, like knowing this particular substandard goods are in our country and actually they've been sold to the population. Albeit the fact that, yes, they spoke from two different sides of the coin, what we cannot run away from, Dan, is that these goods are here. They are being sold. The issue is, how did they fail? And I think it should have been better for them to run in one place and look at the whole thing in totality. And it would have been very nice for them to give the Kenyan people a standard and a sensible report. This is what we have at hand. This is the amount of contaminated sugar that we are talking about. This is how it got into the country. This is what we are doing. That's not what happened. Everybody was caught flat-footed. And that's why I'm saying it's a failure. It's a multi-agency failure.
Because a failure to the point where we have one CS openly saying we have mercury.
Yes.
Saying it publicly.
Yes.
Then the other one comes and says there's nothing like that.
Exactly. And by the way, that's what I'm saying. Everybody was, we questioned ourselves. I mean, who's telling the truth? what is happening? These are people from the same government, and everybody saw it. All right. So, and that's why you see many people are saying, "Oh, there's politics in play." You know. But I feel sorry. I feel sorry for the people caught in the middle. I really do. Like the cabras we are talking about. You know, it's like when you see somebody who is trying so hard, you know, having brought up a brand that people have loved, and then you realize this is the easiest way to get these substandard goods into the market. Let us use a renowned brand. KEBS and KRA and the Matiang'i-led team, these are the gatekeepers. They should ensure such things should not make way into the country. Okay, they've made way. So what next? What must we do? I've heard the ANC leader talking about setting up a commission in Congress. We don't need one. Parliament and Senate is enough. All they need to do then is raise up the standard. Is all of us to raise up the stakes. We know these people. They are known. Whether they have a political muscle behind them, we know this. So what should we do? We must do all we need to do to ensure that the Kenyan citizen is kept safe from harm. And by the way, it is not only in sugar. You saw the fertilizer. You saw the DPP. And by the way, I congratulate this fellow. To me, apart from the president who has taken this corruption notch a little bit higher, the DPP is the other person who's playing serious ball on it. He's following people. He's gotten help from Interpol. He's been given a check to follow everybody and anyone who he feels is doing harm when it comes to corruption in this country. And we should support him. But at the end of the day, I think we need to raise up the structures to ensure that these counterfeit goods don't come in. By the way, today it's sugar. And many people are wondering, why is it sugar? Why is it sugar? Then you have to realize the amount of tonnage used daily, household and industrial, in this country. Then you start getting the frame of mind. Okay. This is one commodity that is used from the chai you take at home, to the bread, to the beer, to the soda that you drink. So imagine when that is contaminated. And that's why I know you've watched series on TV like Airport, Australia. You've had FDA. I mean, look at how they play. You cannot even bring vegetables in those countries. That is the stakes I'm talking about. Those are that's the kind of system that you should be talking about, to ensure that once something comes in, it can be tracked. We need to know the patch number that it comes in. Unless you're talking about serious rivalry that has actually political support, then it will be a huge dragon to slay.
Muthiora, when you look at the joint statement that Matiang'i and Aden sent out after their open conflict, which also came out in Mail Me and the story there, we see that now when they talk about the contamination, the statement says, during the crackdown, the multi-agency team has confiscated some sugar that was found to have been contaminated as a result of poor handling and storage. We don't really see anything about the mercury anymore. It seems like Matiang'i has actually almost backed down from his initial position. I mean, what is this to say about government? I mean, for the confidence of Wananchi who are looking to the leadership, as a source of kind of hope and direction.
This is another game that the government is playing on the people like they have done before. Matiang'i is a serious scholar, if I can use that word. He holds a PhD, so when he comes out to address a matter, he does that from a point of information. The government chemist is premised under his ministry. So when he came and told Kenyans that there is mercury in the contaminated sugar that we have confiscated, he had grounds for that. So when he comes out again and kind of takes a different direction, we now see insincerity. It appears like they had a different war and they've sorted that out. They were just using the sugar to get people on the table to talk about that other problem. And now that they have agreed, the public can go and hang.
But
wherever that is.
Just on your statement about the government chemist, it's KEBS who is meant to be doing this test. And even the statement that they gave again jointly says the role of ensuring that any goods that enter this country comply with Kenyan standards rests by law solely with the Kenya Bureau of Standards, who have the capability and requisite laboratories, either directly or through international agents such as Bureau Veritas, CCIG, Intertech, International, SGS, and Cotecna. So we don't even see the government, KEBS, this is a KEBS thing.
Yeah, it's a KEBS thing, but for Matiang'i to have all the information he needs, he can send a sample for testing. That I know he has, because you see, like when he's investigating KEBS, he cannot go to KEBS and tell them, let us check if this sugar that you tested is contaminated. So I'm just saying he had an alternative mechanism to confirm the information that KEBS was giving him is the right information. So he was, according to me, he was talking from a point of information. Now, KEBS was of a different opinion. They were talking about just copper and not mercury. Now, when they come and reconcile, obviously Matiang'i is at fault. And what KEBS was doing is taking its role seriously to safeguard the public in terms of maybe just perception. We may have contaminated poisonous sugar, but they do not want to admit liability. So they say it's not as bad as it has been said out there. But the reality is that sugar is contaminated. Now, there's even the other part that we are not following. We see a lot of sugar being confiscated. Now, every sugar out there is contraband, apparently. And that is scaring the people for no good reason, because not all the sugar out there is bad sugar. There is sugar that is safe, that was imported through the right channels, but now we are going on a witch hunt. Anyone who is dealing in sugar is now like an illegal business person, which is something we should not be doing. So I'll say the approach they are taking is not the right approach.
Dan, the question you raise is actually very critical, because two things come to play. One is, at what point was this commodity, sugar, contaminated? And that's why I'm saying, was there somebody who was too quick to press the panic button? Or should we have waited until the whole exercise was done? I'll give you an example. It's like how you handle fish. Fish leaving, if it was caught leaving, a freshwater lake like Lake Victoria, and brought into Nairobi and served at a restaurant only for somebody who is going to consume it to realize he's had food poisoning, you must realize that when it was caught, it was fresh. So yes, there has been an element of handling that particular product before it got to the consumer. So where or at which point was this product contaminated? If it left source, was transported into this country, it passed customs, where KEBS is, where you have, the health officers. Was it actually tested at that particular juncture? Was it contaminated during transportation? Was it contaminated at storage? Those are the answers me and you would want to know. Anything else outside there is details which we don't want to know. We only know that we have contaminated sugar on our shelves. How did it get there? I gave an example today, this morning, somebody and said, it's only common if, Dan, you woke up one day and you find a snake in your house. You must do three things, which are actually common sense. The first one is, yes, you have a serpent. You first of all throw the tantrums, you run around, hey, how did it do? The next thing you must do is, how did this serpent get in here? Thirdly, what structures do you need to put in place so that you don't get this visitor again? That is what we should be doing. How did it get here? We've thrown the tantrums that we have to throw. Yes, it is a very serious issue. Yes, it is affecting health of many Kenyans. What do we do next? How do we ensure? We've set up serious structures. And that's why I'm saying, if we don't put up, we have science and technology. These are things should be aiding us to ensure such practices don't take place. Many other countries have won this war. I've just given you an example of FDA. They don't take the slightest chance. with food and drugs that are going to be consumed by their population. So it is the very same thing. So we have to ask, did a CS, did they press the panic button without having full information? That's what we need to know. Because we have this product with us. What do we do next? Dan, that is the question we should be asking.
And just to reinforce on that point, we know that the sugar that KEBS tested for contamination, actually the results showed that it had higher than the acceptable amounts of copper. Now, how does copper contaminate sugar in storage and transportation? It's clear that when this sugar came into the country, it was already contaminated. Now, I do not need to go into the lab to make that kind of an analysis. Now, the next question we should be asking is, how much of this sugar is out there? We can see that they are trying to confiscate all the sugar that is out there. But the truth is, not all the sugar is contaminated. Now, who is bringing this contaminated sugar? And who is protecting them?
And who's protecting the farmer? Because the farmer right now, we find them already complaining, saying, it seems there are cartels that have pretty much brought down the industry locally.
Correct.
But we're seeing sugar coming from abroad, which is not even detrimental to the Mwananchi.
Of course.
But it seems that not even their confidence in the government playing its part is waning.
Dan, you see how this thing should play? Actually, it's very easy, because number one is to ensure Dan is a miller. Like now, giving example to Cabras. This is the amount of sugar they are able to come up with in a particular day or month or whatever period. All right? Then, as a country, this is the deficit that we have for this product. All right? So how much do we need to bring in, and who is to bring it in? That's why I was so supportive for millers to be bringing in sugar. You know why? Because we can track it. We can track it very well. But when you open up the window, everybody is bringing. And by the way, that's why you find many cartels run to the sugar industry, because it's easy. One, you're not paying employees, you're not paying farmers, you're not paying anybody. All right? Apart from probably corrupting individuals here and there to have that product in it. And that's why I'm saying it is very, very critical for the government and the administration of the day to protect the sugar farmers and the local industry. That should be the nearest asking point for them to protect these people. Because once you do that, you have a systematic way of knowing that this is the amount we need to bring in, and it will be brought in by XYZ. Should anything happen, should there be any contaminant, it will be so easy to know which batch, who brought in. But now, Dan, you have people putting sugar in Isili and other parts of this country and branding it as if it came from Cabras. It's already in our shelves. Yeah. How do you go about it now? I mean, you see the convolution.
The other question here is, why are we so sure that it's actually contaminated? If we already, there was some doubt initially about, maybe someone ran and hit the panic button too early. The other CS said, the CS under whom the KEBS sits came and said there's no contamination. Yeah. It may look like you said, it may have some political elements to it, some business rivalries.
Of course.
So what makes us so sure now that there's actually contaminated sugar in the market?
You see, one thing they agree is that there are elements of contamination, both of them.
This looks like, could it be also like a crisis management kind of thing? Because you're like, we've already gone against each other in public. Yeah. Let's bring out something with a single front.
It could be, but the minute it has passed, the minute it has passed the normal the normal consumable or accepted standards, then it is unsafe for human consumption. Yes, we are told, there are some element of mercury in tea, in fish, yes, but those are said to be okay
safe
for human consumption. The minute they go past that, then there's a red flag right in. And that's why I said probably somebody pressed the panic button quickly before knowing what this whole thing entailed. And that's why it could be, yes, an element of politics in it. We never know. And that's why I'm so eagerly waiting for this report to come out today. There's an element of truth, Dan, that we must be told. If it is there, how much? Because nobody seems to know. The issue is so convoluted. Who brought it in? That's the other thing. Where was it stored? When was it brought in? And by the way, where were all these people? That's why I talked about two criminalities: the criminal culpability and the managerial. Somebody knew, or probably, the person we've entrusted with that particular safe or gatekeeping, they did nothing. And so they are culpable. So when we see charges the DPP is bringing onto them, like attempted murder, oh yes, that is it. That should be it. In fact, we should raise the bar, make it murder, because how do we know how many people have died probably of consuming substandard goods?
But we have to go with definite information.
Yes, we do. But I'm just asking how many people have died. Probably the cancer cases we are.
I want to come back to you in just a bit, but we need to take a short break. But we'll come back and you can pick it up on that one in just a bit. Take a short break on NTV today. We'll be back with more conversations on the sugar cartels country, as well as other graft cases in the country. All right, welcome back to NTV Today. Dan Mwangi is my name, and we're still here with our two gentlemen who are helping us get into the issues of right now we're talking largely on the contraband sugar cases and the different dynamics around them. And now, Muthiora, you had something you wanted to say before we took a break.
Yes, you asked about the farmer's position in this whole matter, and I'll tell you, the kind of leadership we have in Kenya is one that profits when the Mwananchi down there is being downtrodden on. So they seem to be giving a solution when all they do is give false hope. People know that if things work, then an opportunity to profit will not sprout. So let us have chaos. Let's have systems that do not work, so therein we can always make a kill. Now, there is someone, and let me use the word cartel. There are cartels that know that if we let the sugar industry stand, we will not have an opportunity to do business. So they make sure that whenever efforts to revive the milling, the sugar belt and the sugar industry are jump-started, they make sure it doesn't work, because when that works, the only people who will benefit in a big way will be the common people down there, and the profit margins in that kind of a scenario are not as big. So let us make sure that that doesn't work, so there will be a deficit and there'll be an opportunity for us to import sugar. That's the whole thing. So the government today needs to now take its role seriously and take the responsibility they've been given by Mwananchi sacredly, if there's such a word, and protect that Mwananchi. Make sure, because if it's land, Kenya has sufficient land. If it's climate, we have the right climate. There is no way Mauritius can be so good at producing sugar that we import sugar from Mauritius, a country that is smaller than Kisumu County. It's obnoxious. So let us make this industry work so that the farmer profits, the business people profit, and this happens in a setup where ethics are upheld. That way we'll improve the quality of produce that comes from Kenya, and we'll even be able to export and thereby create the jobs that we are looking to create. Let's be serious for once. Let's take politics out of this. Let us embrace the business side and ensure that we do that in an ethical manner. Okay,
it sounds well and good. It sounds very nice when you paint the picture of this ideal case of where we shall actually not have cartels. We shall have, you know, if Dan goes and does his business legitimately, he's going to get the returns, he'll get clean money. But how do we get there? How easy is it, or how difficult is it?
Dan, it's very easy, and I'll talk about corruption, wholly, not only the sugar issue, yes, but what we are going through, the NYS and everything. You see, I think first of all, I told you we need to use things like technology. We need to use science. We need to use statistical data to help us alleviate corruption. Corruption can be won, by the way. Even if we are going to say that we can deal with 95% of corruption, and yes, 5%, No country in the world can claim immunity from corruption. But I can guarantee you, and I can tell you for sure, corruption in Kenya can be won. We can bring it to an all-time low. Let me tell you what. I was among the people who were advocating against entrepreneurship. I advocated against it so badly. You know why, Dan? If the speed in which our young men and women are going to register companies for supplies and entrepreneurial purposes is a speed in which they are setting up factories or what you'd call tech startups, Kenya would be a first world. It would. But what we are doing is that we've opened up a conduit where we do not need or think of adding value. It's just to make a quick dollar, just to make a quick shilling. We've lost it.
The betting craze as well.
I'm telling you, you need to, the max you will do is to run from point A and buy a padlock at point C and bring it to government. But turn it around a little bit. What if you came up with an idea of building that padlock so that you can open up to sell that particular product within the region? Not only to trade with government, but you now start trading with countries. Dan, let me tell you, there's something we need to understand and understand it well. That it is not only what we consume that will make this country big. Yes, we get money from tourism. That is very good. Yes, we have roads and bridges. They are very good. As a matter of fact, they offer trajectory to development. But that's not it. The mightiness of a nation is not what we bring in, is what we take out there. The weight of the material done is what people see out there. That is what makes Kenya, or that's what should make Kenya what it is. Back in the 80s and 70s, Kenya was known by a product called tea and coffee. The weight of the material. Anytime you see a Benz, a Toyota, a Boeing landing in our airports, that's a made in somewhere. That's the weight of the material, is what they bring in. So that is the mentality that we must encompass. Corruption is just not only in money. No. It is actually creating a hostile environment that these products cannot survive. Why have we killed our local industries? And that's why we need to ask. It's through importation. It's through giving out licenses to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. Why can we not? Yes, we know we have an issue with our production cost. We are working to bring it down. And that's one area where I congratulate the government in trying to bring those tariffs down, in opening up almost near tariffs working at night. That is a direction. I mean, that's a right step in the right direction. Allow our production cost to come low so that even if somebody brings in sugar from wherever they are bringing it, they can compete with the Cabras. They can compete with Mumias. But when you allow this person to bring in sugar that he is selling at a throwaway price, how will we protect our farmers? How will we protect that local industry? We've killed it. So as much as we are talking about killing corruption, Dan, if we fail to set up systems and structures of good governance, it's a losing battle.
Muthiora, do you think it's as easy as it says in terms of fighting corruption and getting to a point where we say that you can actually, the picture you are painting of, you get into a deal, you get your clean money, and you actually can become wealthy off that? Is it that easy from where we are now?
Dan, it's that easy. Let's not complicate it. This is the point where I ask you to take His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta's words to the bank. He's said he's going to fight corruption. He's told us he's fighting it. We have seen him take action. The question is, what are you doing? Dan, I'm here. I'm telling you I'm incorruptible. Where are you in this structure? That's the question I'm posing to all Kenyans out there. Here's what happens when you take money that does not belong to you. Someone else does not get a service. And when that person does not get a service, he becomes a nuisance to you. Now, if we want to be people who are respectable in society, because Kenya is not living in isolation, we must all take collective responsibility over our actions. Every day I get out there, I meet people who are both optimistic and pessimistic when it comes to the fight of corruption. There are those who know that for their lives to change, everything as is today in Kenya must change. And they are willing to do that. But then they think it is someone else's work for that to stop happening. EACC has less than 1,000 employees. And yet the perceived level of corruption in Kenya is 79.3%. Now, how can 1,000 people fight this vice that is so entrenched? We've got to help them. Rather than point fingers, we need to take action. And right now, we have a champion already in our president. For once, let's just say, I will do what my president says. I will not be corrupt. And when I see someone engaging in the vice, I will take action. I'll say it here that there are media houses, and I laud NTV and NMG for that matter for not promoting corruption. There are some media houses where for you to just show up, you have to know someone, you have to pay something. Now, a company such as this that openly fights corruption through your work, through your practice, is doing what everyone else needs to do. For companies and businesses out there to thrive, they need to have their cost of business at the lowest level, and corruption inhibits that. Now, you go to them and they will tell you we have a code that we ensure that our employees follow. So everyone is driven towards fighting corruption. We know we have less than 800,000 civil servants. And that's where the biggest problem is. These are the people we say, the people who are eating, because they collude with the tenderpreneurs, and that way we loot billions every year. Our president is dealing with this because they're in his executive. Let us help him. Let us believe that we can win this war. Last year, 8,044 cases were filed at the EACC. This year, we would like to see that number, as in every case that we see, let us report it. Let us get action taken. Do not let it go. Let us have 100,000 cases next year, so we realize that the 2.9 billion that was allocated to EACC was not enough. Let us hire enough people. Let us give this institution teeth. Let's not talk about disbanding it because it has not been effective. Let us enable it.
And by the way, he's right. As we also criticize, we must also give praise where it's due. And yes, the president, came out wholeheartedly and said, let's fight this thing. It can be won. And by so doing, he actually brought in an element of difference, serious difference. One was in the DPP's office. The other one we saw was, in the Chief Justice, not Chief Justice, but the Attorney General's office. And when I look at the change that the president brought in, I can actually say without fear of contradiction that we are seeing some elements of fruits that are coming out of it. Nordin Haji has taken his job so seriously that we are, for the first time, we are seeing watertight cases. Him coming out and say we have watertight case on these individuals. And if he continues in that spirit, my prayer is that the court and the judiciary system will not fail him. Let's not make it what it used to be back in the day, that when somebody has money, they can, throw everybody in town and throw them out, chew everybody up and spit, and spit them out. Let's see some serious people serving serious jail terms. And given the direction that we are going, we've seen PSs in, we are seeing very senior people brought in. And by the way, bringing in senior people still does not leave people out there. You've seen the procurement officers and the accounting officers in ministries. They are going to be taking polygraph tests. And I'm liking the fact that, yes, at one time the court nullified that ruling, but it also, in the light of everything, they saw where things were going and they allowed it to happen. Parliament and Senate, they have a very big role to play. They need to read the mood of the people and say, no, at this juncture, we need to act accordingly. If This vice called corruption is going to tear this country apart. We need to rise up to the occasion. We need to do our job, and not only just doing it, we need to do it with the due diligence that it deserves, and it has to be fair. As we talk about our courts, let's strengthen these institutions of justice. Let justice be disseminated and get to the core and to the bottom of these matters. Let people go to jail. Let people spend serious jail terms. And as we do so, the multi-agency must be allowed to work. Let it work. The DPP, the central bank, freeze these accounts. By the way, Dan, I tell you, this war can be won. Many people I know are very pessimistic, but this is a war that can be won. Even if we will not reach the 100 percentile mark, we can do a serious dent into corruption in this country.
You know, one of the things that, I mean, and I get what you say, you know, it's individual, like Muthiora said, it's individual. Like when I decide that I'll be incorruptible, then it becomes the culture I have. But we need to acknowledge that we are in a place where the people who are so deep in it, it's not going to be automatic. It's easier for those who've not gotten much of the opportunity. As much as the opportunity presents itself in the smallest of ways, being the excess person kwa matatu, you know, being if I'm driving, if I'm overlapping, because exactly. that is the same thing. But there's the guy who, let me give you an analogy. There's a guy who probably earns 100,000. That's his take home. But because of the kind of deals and kickbacks he gets, he takes home about 300. Yes. And that means his life is based on 300,000. The schools his kids are going to, the car is driving, the mortgage, exactly. the loans. So how do you tell this guy tomorrow suddenly change? You know, I mean, and because if there are a number of those people, then it become a difficult thing for that to change. It's not the same as someone who has just been excess. He'll decide.
Then you know what corruption does. Before my good friend comes in, corruption throws away positive competition. That's the first thing that's thrown out of the window. I know he earns 50,000. He's driving a Range Rover. He lives in Runda. I earn actually more than him. Competition will be thrown out. You know why? Because I want to live like him. Because he's living it and he's getting away with it. People are corrupt not because we do not have a strong penal code in this country. Yeah. It's just because people can get away with it. And once I know, hey, hang on a minute, I can steal $1 billion, pay some lawyers 200 million and get away with it, why do I need to be employed? So I'll start structuring my life on probably a 5-year window and say by 5 years, I'd have stolen $1 billion shillings. I'll use 100 million to play with our judicial system. And by the way, finally, I'll get to enjoy my 900 million. I'll invest here and there, blah, 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 blah. But guess what? If the structures are set that this guy will not enjoy that money, guess what? It will ensure that I play with the rules. So that after 3 years, I can say, hey, boss, Bioza Sakafuni, bye-bye, you're gone. That will be it. That's how you create competition, by ensuring people don't get away with it. Let me tell you something that will throw our viewers actually out of the fun a little bit. Somebody put it this way. You're not a thief because you've stolen. You've stolen because you're a thief. Kind of weird, right? It just means you have not just found an opportunity to steal. Yeah. Because character precedes action. You steal because that's in your DNA. Yeah. But if it isn't, even if they put millions in front of you, and there are so many people, I know so many people, even in government, who are like that, who will not take a coin from the public coffers. They are there. There are so many. And those are the people we need to protect. Those are the people we need to incentivize so that they can do a great and a good job. But if the same people realize, hang on a minute, Dan just came in the other day. He's living large. Man, when I retire, what will my children tell me? Daddy, kwani wewe ulikuwa unafanya kazi wapi? Why are you not living like this guy and you act in the same office? You see, competition out of the window. And just because somebody knows they can get away with it, oh, my friend, we'll get into that vice.
Yeah, now, he's basically covered how we need to approach this. Like I said, it's you and me. There's the guy ahead of you who's already doing something. What are you doing about it? Now, Dan, I know you're my friend. I can imagine from the kind of a job you do, this is how much you make. As your friend, I need to point it to you when I realize there are certain things you're able to afford that your job does not support. These days, when you see someone with a good big car, what do? We want to admire, we want to wish that we can have that. What I want to urge Kenyans to do is let us hold people to account. We adopted devolution, and that way we also devolved corruption. These days you go to some of our smaller towns and someone can tell you that property belongs to the governor, this one belongs to the sister of the governor, this one belongs to the MP. You see, it's as if it's a good thing. Right now, what we need to do is we need to be stopping these people and telling them that you cannot tilt the scales like you've been doing before. Because when someone comes to a Harambee and what everyone else is able to give is 2,000 shillings, but for them, they are able to give 2 million. Basically, they've upset the balance in that whole place. And when these are proceeds of crime, which is what corruption is, we should not allow them to get away with it. We should hold them to account. We should tell it to them in their faces. We know how much you make. Hii pesa ya wizi, tafadhali rudisha pale ulitoa kabla tukuchukulie hatua. If you see that good car, don't just admire it. That's your money. You should tell that person off. Let's make Kenya uncomfortable for these culprits. Now, the part we need most help with is the banking system, because when they loot this money, first of all, it goes to the banks before they take it and hide it in real estate. I wish when they stole, they invested this money to create employment for the youth. But these people are not doing that. What they're doing is they steal. If the money doesn't go abroad, they buy real estate, they buy big cars, basically things like that. Now, if our banks can play their role and fight money laundering and make sure that when this money is stolen does not go through that system, then we are heading in the right direction. So what we need to do as the people on the ground is to make sure that this money, if I can use Kiswahili, haiji kututesa mtaani. Let's tell these people off. A thief who steals a chicken is no different from a thief who wears a tie and wires money to their account. They are all thieves. Let's tell them off, and let's take the action that will correct this habit from percolating down to the generations that are yet to be born. Because like he mentioned, our kids will ask us, why are you poor when the colleagues you worked with are so rich? What were you doing? Let us not put ourselves in that situation where we'll have to answer our children that, you see, I did not steal. Let us not glorify thuggery. Tukataa hiyo.
All right. And a lot of this also centers on leadership and the qualities of leadership. One of the things we're talking about a bit earlier, and was still heavy on the sugar issue, was about the Matiang'i issue versus the Adan issue. And Matiang'i is, you know, qualification, so to speak, in terms of his knowledge of leadership in government has been put to question. And it was put by a former minister, and that's Amos Kimunya, who's the former trade minister, also former finance minister in the Kibaki government. He spoke about Matiang'i in Mombasa last week, speaking about his action in terms of announcing that you know the sugar is contaminated. And let's listen to what he has to say about Matiang'i.
When I look at the headlines that we are seeing, these sugar wars may be looking, you know, local entertainment. But when a cabinet secretary stands up and says that Kenyan sugar has mercury, what are Kenyans expected to do? But we may be surprised and happy and saying, oh, it has mercury, it doesn't. Imagine a tourist in America who had booked to come to Kenya and reads headlines that a cabinet secretary has said Kenyan sugar has mercury and is coming to a hotel. Will he come? And we keep blaming the Americans that they are giving travel advisories, and it's because of our inexperience and activism, even in government, that we are now trying to kill the same economy we are hoping to build. Let's pray for Kenya and try to teach people that there are secrets. You don't go telling people just to appear you are the minister who is working most, right? We did it in our time. Yeah?
So Kimunya is alluding to Sirikali.
Yes.
And he's actually called Matiang'i inexperienced. Yeah. And he's an activist in government. Mm-hmm. But the principles here, you know, his words notwithstanding, are about Matiang'i's style of leadership vis-a-vis being in government. What are your comments on that?
No, I still think, honestly, like I told you earlier, this issue could have or should have been communicated properly. I remember I'm giving a very good example here. In fact, it should actually highlight what we're going through. I remember sometimes in 2010, there's a company that does infant formulas in the US, and the FDA, I remember, called Abbott. The FDA recalled infant formula. But the way they did it, parents still went out there and continued to buy formula. Because the way it was recalled, they knew exactly what they were recalling, which batch they were recalling, and there was no need for any alarm to be raised. All right, and that's the structure I'm talking about. So there is there is a systematic way of communicating such a thing. So I can understand where Kimunya is coming from, because Kimunya is so concerned about where the economy should be going, and he's saying, you know, the economy we are trying to build can actually be watered down by some of the communication that is going out there. And it is true. If somebody is coming to Kenya and they are coming for a holiday and they hear such a thing, they'll be like, wow, what else could be happening there? What else am I going to feed that is not fit for human consumption? So that's why I think there is proper way of communicating this, apart from pressing a panic button. Should have known when these commodities arrived. Should have known who brought in these commodities. You should have known how long it's been here. We should have actually known the quantities which we are talking about, and probably which supermarkets, you know, this sugar is stored. So to an extent, to a very big extent, I agree with Amos Kimunya. There is a style that government, and this is not only Matiang'i, that government needs to communicate when such things do take place.
What's your comment on that?
Well, I'll say Kenya belongs to us all. And what Kimunya is doing over there is trying to make sure that cabinet secretaries and other leaders do not tear this country apart or claw back the progress we have made so far. So he's totally in order to caution the leaders not to go public with matters that they can take care of just within their portfolios. Now, that said, I will go back to what I had said. Matiang'i had a basis to tackle this matter. The way he did it is where there's a problem. He is the kind of a person who has the machinery to take action rather than just issue decrees or public statements. One thing we know, which is a good thing, is that we have contaminated sugar in Kenya, thanks to Matiang'i. That's confirmed. I know he was not just guessing. He had confirmed that. But how he brought it forth is what there is a problem with. And then how he has gone back again and is almost eating his own words.
And fair enough, he came and, you know, made it known that there's contaminated sugar in the country. But, you know, like Kimunya says, so what is Mwananchi to do? Should he have probably, because what happens is, we're having conversations and you hear people go to the supermarket and they stand at the sugar shelves.
Right.
And they're wondering now, do I buy, do I not buy? And we've seen some honey companies already riding on the wave and they're saying, buy honey. You know, we don't have that. So he sort of threw a problem the way of the public, but did not offer some sort of, solution or some reprieve to say, however, A, B, C, D, because then that threw people into some sort of uncertainty of what next.
Dan, you see, first of all, the issue of sugar should not have been happening in the first place. This craze of contaminated sugar should not have been happening in the first place. So we are looking at really a reactive response from everybody when they realize this matter was in play. And by the way, I cannot judge badly or negatively the common mwananchi for the steps they were to take, whether they will just, back off from sugar, which again will affect the local companies who've already stocked their sugars in these supermarkets, because they've done nothing wrong. They've really done nothing wrong. They've marketed their sugar company only for them now to be hauled into this imbalance. But what probably we all should have expected was a dramatic and a radical shift between all these government bodies that are, authorized to bring or to import or to bring these matters into the fore. There should have been a very serious sitting between all these CSs that we are told, and to find out where are we in this regard. What is in play? If we are talking about contaminated sugar, how long has it been? So when you're coming to Anjiko, you are coming with a very finite communication. This is where we are in this regard, and this is what we are planning to do. But you saw, every person did know who was saying the truth or what the truth was. This yes is saying this one is saying different. This one is speaking like that one rebuttals. That's what was played the whole of last week. But imagine if all of them were in one place and they gave a clear communique that this is where we are in this matter sugar, and this is what we are doing. Guess what? The confidence level that we'll be having in this country would be different from what we have. Because right now what we have done is a panic.
Yeah. Dan, there is an activist by the name Okiya Omtata. We make fun of him that he's always in court fighting battles that we haven't sent him to fight. But what Kenyans need to do is we need to take the nation building role seriously and know that it depends on you, not on anyone else. Like I mentioned, we've seen the quality of the sugar that we buy in our shops go down over time, and nobody has taken it seriously. When the famous popular lawyer Apollo Mboya took KPLC by the horns, a lot of us just sat back and watched, when in fact we should have gotten involved. What we need to do as citizens, if Kenya is to achieve its full potential, is take our role as citizens seriously. If there is a matter that's going bad, know that it's nobody else's responsibility but your own. If you do not do something, then nothing will get done. Query, question, follow up, participate, take action. Don't just sit back. That's how we'll be able to come out of some of the problems that are plaguing us right now. Today it's sugar. There's a time there was a thing about milk. How that was resolved, nobody followed up. But there was a sensational story about how milk had been poisoned or laced or matters like that. We've had stories covered by our local media about how we have counterfeit drugs in our pharmacies. They just run and then nobody follows that up. Like I mentioned earlier, we have almost a total failure in our system. Just because it hasn't completely stopped grinding doesn't mean that every other sector is okay. Let us be responsible citizens. Let us love our nation. It depends on you. If you do not do it, nobody else will. And by the time we realize that something went wrong, it may be too late. The Solai Dam disaster, we've forgotten about it. We heard the other day that KPC had lost almost 100 billion. Now, they say that's not the money that was lost, but they have confirmed there is over 600 million that was stolen. That has been confirmed. Nobody's in court yet. We're still doing the probes. And yet, We want to believe that we are heading forward at the right speed. Yes, we are moving in the right direction, but then is the pace what it should be? And for that pace to be what it should be, then we all need to be pulling in the same direction. And that is, let us just say no to corruption. Let us say no to mediocrity. The graft war, like we see today, is now starting to go tribal in a way. There are people who are saying it's only a certain faction of the Jubilee that's being targeted in this purge towards corruption. And I say, if this is going to break Jubilee, that's a small price to pay if we are going to win the war on corruption. Now, if those people who are saying they're being targeted know who else is corrupt in Jubilee, then they should tell us who it is so we can go after them as well. Kenya will be better if we do everything right. We have the right laws. Our constitution supports that kind of a framework.
Okay, and I want us to get into the conversation about the fact that the president has come out very strongly against corruption, and that's what we'll pick up right after we come from this break. We take a short break on NTV today. We'll be back after this to continue the conversation on the state of corruption. Now we come back to our conversation here in studio, gentlemen, and like we said, the president has got this renewed strength, at least what is being seen, renewed drive to fight corruption. Did we have to get here for him to be this tough?
I think, Dan, first of all, we need to look at the chronology of why that happened. Some time back in his first term, I think the president went to parliament, you all remember that, and brought in names of individuals who he was told were the people who were mentioned in corruption cases. And several years later, none of those individuals was found culpable. I think the only person who we've been hearing being called back to the dockets is the former CS engineer Kamau. And the cases we are told, that are brought, or the charges that are brought forth for him were when there were those abuses or apparent abuses, alleged abuses that happened while he was in a PS, or rather what I've been able to read. Taking cue from that, the president some months ago mentioned that these people called him. Some of them were saying, you brought our names out. Look, we were left to dry. We were found to have done nothing wrong, the likes of Charity Ngilu and who have you. And I think that is why we saw the president do a radical change in 3 institutions: the Attorney General's office, the DPP, and the DCI. Dan, I think, and sometimes I feel sorry for the president because of these 2 things. He means well. By all designs, you can see he means well. But when he is given names and he brings these people forth, and these people walk scot-free, having some whose careers have been ruined, it goes back to him. So I think what the president was looking for, I'm just suspecting probably I need people who will build watertight cases, so that when I'm fighting these fights, I know I am doing it to a logic conclusion that will actually bear fruit. Because he understands and he realizes, yes, there is corruption. And he does not take care of this monster right now. Dan, one thing I can guarantee you here and now is that corruption will water down his legacy and his Big 4 agenda. So you have a president here who has said and told Kenyans, join me in this war. We can win it. And that's why I'm getting a lot of momentum. When I see the people he's put out there, the DPP, forget EACC. Me, sometimes I think, and I'm glad the president is not paying too much attention to EACC. They've been there. Very little they've done. Albeit the fact that we are saying, they don't have a lot of people. The resources I know they've been given. But the DPP is a man who is heading in the right direction. That's why I started out by saying, let every Kenyan of goodwill support that institution. And if he can guarantee us what we are saying, that he can build watertight cases, because half of the time that's what we were lacking. We move people very quickly to court, and guess what? Before you say cut and a half, that person is out. It is good. By the way, it is a good picture to see a CS and a PS sleeping or spending nights at the remand. It is a good thing. Because at the very least you can see we can do this. We can fight this war. We can win this war. And I started by telling you that even if we will not bring corruption to an all-time low, we can deal, and the president can deal a serious blow into that vice. And guess what? Probably that's all that's needed.
You know, well and good what you've said, but last year backwards was his first term. Could it be a case of where he was you know, trying not to destroy his political capital, because he might go for people who might eventually deal a blow into his chances of getting back into office?
Well, I think the president has this renewed strength and vigor because he believes this war can be won, first and foremost, and secondly, he now has nothing to lose.
So that goes back to the political capital thing, because now he doesn't need anyone to vote for him. So even if he makes a few enemies as collateral, he's okay with that.
Yes, and the beneficiary in that case is Kenya. It's you and me. So let us hope that this strength is not going to be watered down by the noises that are being made right now within the Jubilee circles and the other victims, because corruption actually has no victims. If you stole, you're a thief, you should face the law. The only victim is the person from whom the money is being stolen from, or the person who's supposed to get a service and is not getting the service. Now, sometimes the universe conspires and puts within your reach opportunities and resources that you need to get a task done. And I think that's what has happened for the president at this time. He has a kind of support that he did not have when he was elected president in 2013. It's still very early in his term, and we know that even the opposition is supporting him in the fight against corruption. Now, there's also this other thing that people naively did when they were campaigning, and that is from the MCAs to the members of parliament to senators and governors, they promised people out there that we are going to fight corruption. What they were doing then is basically what I would say, putting a noose on their necks if they didn't mean it, because the president should use that against them, that you said you're not going to tolerate corruption. I promised the people as much. So if you're not going to support this fight against corruption, I'll have action taken against you. So he has the political support that he needs. The environment is right. Kenya is yearning for that change in our leadership, where we can uphold values, we can have principles, we can have integrity, and people can do that which they have promised to do and deliver without looking to make excuses so they get another opportunity.
Well, Dan, in terms of capital mileage, and the last question that you asked, also makes a lot of sense. But you remember, we had never seen a president go to parliament and name a number of people, bring it out. It has never happened. That was actually the first time it was happening. And I knew it was actually going to get him into some sort of political trouble, because the people like Ngilu, when names came out, he really took a beating onto that. The people that whose names he brought out in the fore were people they had handpicked in Jubilee, the likes of engineer, CS, former CS engineer, Davis Chitri. All these people, they had handpicked them. And for them to see these individuals go, at one point they knew it was going to take a beating onto them. And to him, I think the war and why he made that radical change is because when such people, you've brought them in parliament and they've gone through the justice systems and they've been found not to have been culpable, what do you do then? Ngilu never came back, but the president lost support in Ngilu's backyard. So that was something he was willing to juggle which actually, sprang back to boomerang and hit him directly on his face. So as a matter of fact, when he realized this would happen, people can just come and bring names, and I would go and say these people need to be investigated, only for them to go scot-free. He said, no, I need to change. I need to have people who can investigate these cases seriously. I need people who can build watertight cases, and I found people who can do this. And that's why you have this office of the DPP, and that's why I'm hoping, I have so much faith in that office, given just what they've been able to do. And for somebody to come out in the open and say, the cases we have are watertight, I mean, those are sentences we don't hear, we were not used to. And so that's why I'm saying, if we can have somebody who has risen up to fight such a vice, then what we must do as peace-loving Kenyans, as patriotic Kenyans, is to offer our undivided support to that institution. And so it was so good when the handshake took place between Uhuru and Raila, because they made it their core business to deal with corruption. And if the goodwill is there, let's go after these people. Let's make sure, since this goodwill is here, we do not know when that goodwill will expire. But for the time being, let us use all the resources guaranteed to us by the law to fight this vice. So political, political capital going, like my good friend has alluded to, let it go. But you know what? Kenyans will gain. If the president is going to lose a few friends, or if Jubilee is going to lose a few friends, so be it. Because every person in Kenya are united in fighting corruption. And if it's going to be a genuine fight, oh, my friend Dan, let's see heads roll.
And we actually saw the president's kind of reaffirmation of where his confidence is, even through the budget.
Yes.
When it came to the agencies that are mandated to deal with corruption, there's about 8 of them.
Yes.
And the budgets were slashed,
yes,
except the DPP,
correct,
who got a higher budget. The total budget going towards fighting corruption was moved from 73 billion in the current financial year we are in, and the proposals for the next financial year have gone down to 70 billion. The only beneficiary of the 8, that's the DPP, is put against all the rest. EACC was slashed, Parliament, yes, was slashed, yes, Judiciary, the agency, yes, and the asset cover agency. And I know this again points where the president's confidence is in the same. And before we get into that, in Parliament you can see that Mwangi, the CS for Agriculture, has arrived. He's arrived for the grilling, where he's meant to be before the joint committees of the National Assembly's Agriculture and Trade Committees, and he's accompanied by his PS for Crop Development, that is Lesiampe, who's on his right, and other high-level officials from the ministry. And so they're meant to be responding to issues regarding the sugar cartels country we've been covering, and the cases of contraband sugar in the country. Hopefully here there will not be a contradiction for what other CSs have said, or the ones who will come after him hopefully would not. That would be the hope in terms of the government circles, to keep the narrative going straight. And even for the Mwananchi, whose concern is that they can actually have some solid information in regards to what exactly is happening in terms of the sugar that they're consuming. So when I go to buy sugar at the supermarket, is it safe for me to take? That is something that has not been clearly put on, because it may have impact on some businesses. So if the government may be expected by people to tell me this is the good one, this is the bad one, but that has not come out clearly. So Mwananchi still goes shopping for sugar with a bit of uncertainty and skepticism, and some have actually moved to taking honey. They feel it's a safer option than going to sugar. We've not heard of any mercury or any other metal or otherwise in honey, and so we've seen people moving to that. We've seen people have said they're moving to that. There's a company that's already blowing its trumpet saying buy honey. They're riding the wave, and so that's Mwangi there alongside some of the leaders in the Ministry of Agriculture. who are before the Joint Committee of National Assembly's Trade and Education. So not education, I beg your pardon, Trade and Agriculture, which are probing to the sugar issue. And we know that the Trade Committee is chaired by Kanini Kega, and the Agriculture one is led by, we can just get that, is by Edan Haji Ali, is the chairperson of the Agriculture and Livestock Committee of the National Assembly, and we shall be picking up that information in a bit. And Seth Olale, like I said, is there, so even if we don't get to listen into everything that's happening, because some of the protocol issues have to happen there on that side before they can now begin the actual grilling, Seth Olale will be sure to bring us the information for our bulletins as we go forward. And of course, at 1 p.m., we shall be having that story in a bit. So now, gentlemen, time is far gone, and we need to cross over to Matters World Cup. At the top of the hour. So, in closing, what are your closing remarks in regards to the state of corruption in the country and what needs to be done, very briefly?
By the way, Dan, thanks thanks for having us. And this topic, like we've talked about it, this is a serious thing. We've seen in Parliament, at least these CSs have been called in. And by just for them to be summoned in Parliament, it tells us one thing, that the Mwananchi does not know what is going on. Up until we hear the report that will come out of Parliament, at least now we'll have a bird's eye view of what is happening. I began by telling you something, Dan, that the country such as ours, we have a lot of goodwill right now that is emanating after the handshake. There's so much that we can do to fight corruption at this point. Corruption, I know for sure, is not perpetrated by this more people here and there. Yes, I know on our dailies today we read about a domestic worker who has brought in about 2 million. It's, I know, 196 million sticks of cigarette. But that just tells you there is somebody who has found a conduit of using, you know, people within his household to do corrupt deals. So there is no way such a person can even have the slightest clue of importing something into this country. So it just goes on to show you how far corruption can actually go if allowed room to continue and to thrive. So we have gotten to a place whereby we need to put and charge the brakes onto this vice before it destroys this country. And it has never found a good spot like it has found today. Why am I saying this, Dan? You have two people who wield greatest political responsibility in this country, who have shaken hands to fight corruption. Every peace-loving Kenyan should actually join the president in fighting this vice. I begin by telling you, and I still stand on those words, that this dragon can be slain. We only need to have the goodwill, and we need to set up serious structures, raise serious structures to deal with corruption.
Thank you very much.
Well, I would like to urge Kenyans to, in this year, try and give less bribes than they gave in the last financial year.
Less bribes or no bribes?
Well, it might be difficult given the way the structure is today to say we'll move from 46% to 0 bribes in 1 year. Let's be realistic. Let Kenyans endeavor to not give a bribe at all. And even if you have to, do it with the thought that you're actually gathering evidence against that public officer so we can get them out of that job and give it to one who really qualifies to be there. Now, we are headed in the right direction. And if there is a time Kenya is ready to win against corruption, that time is now. We are laying the right kind of a foundation. It's not an easy task, although it's a straightforward job. Do not give a bribe, do not take a bribe, do not solicit, do not steal from the public. Do your job and let the other person do their job. It's as easy as that. Wake up early and get there on time so you don't have to jump a queue or you don't have to bribe a traffic police officer because you flouted the traffic rule. Actually today, the police do not need to ask for a bribe in most cases. People commit crimes and offer the bribe themselves even before the police officers ask for it. Let's not be that kind of a people. It's work we must do, And I have decided that I'm going to play my role. That's why you see me dressing like I am in an overall with a Kenyan color, green, red, white, because I love my country. That's why I'm not going to corrupt. That's why I'm going to remain incorruptible. Challenge the people who are beneficiaries of corruption to give up that which they have acquired illegally. And those who try to floss it, tell them off. They're thieves. Let them not enjoy it peacefully, because as they do that, there's someone being denied a service. There's someone dying in a hospital when they could have had the medical care that could have saved their life. There is a child who's not getting the education that could change a whole community.
Thank you very much, Muthiora Kariara and Gabriel Muthuma, for speaking to us. We should do this once again soon. And definitely some good information there, some good points to think about. And I must say your views on the fact that we can change the corruption culture in Kenya